So last week we finally got what we were all looking forward to. The name of Picard's new dog. Number one, personally, I want it to be named Mr. Wolf.
My apologies, Mr. Wolf.
He's so cute, I can't wait. Okay, putting aside, this puppy is so adorable. Excuse me. What we were actually hoping for was the first Star Trek Picard trailer. And oh man, did it deliver. I mean, I audibly gasped and then cried when 7 of 9 showed up. And Brent Spiner's tapping into that whole Hollywood Fountain of Youth thing, so good for him. And Hugh was somewhere. Is that Hugh? Is that him? Is that him? I don't know, that's why it's so exciting. But most importantly, we finally got our first details of the actual plot of the series. Considering it's the first time we've actually seen something on screen past Star Trek Nemesis in about 20 years, that's kind of exciting for every Trek fan. But once I finally stopped rewatching the trailer after about the 100th time, I finally started to realize that on the surface, this show does kind of feel a little bit similar to another Patrick Stewart work out there. It's kind of just a little bit Logan. It's Logan. Star Trek Picard's plot feels a little bit like the last Wolverine movie and the last good X-Men movie, 2017's Logan. But if Patrick Stewart was Wolverine instead of Professor X. Am I the only one who finds that a little bit attractive? Just me? I'm gonna call you Patrick Jackman. Sorry, I'm a little bit weird. But seriously, let's take a deeper look at some of the surface similarities of these two plots. And keep in mind, I'm going to be kind of speculating wildly on Star Trek Picard's story here, but basing it off of what we saw in the trailer. We start the story off with a lead hero of a franchise that we've been following for decades, who used to fight for morality, virtue, and the rights of all people, regardless of who they are. After a major catastrophe in their past, the dissolution of their old team, and the death of several people close to them, and particularly one that totally had an extra special connection to them, they became disillusioned with the world and now try their best to just stay out of everything, and occasionally check in with old friends who remind them of their conscience, as they still feel a calling in their heart to do the right thing, deep down. Yet when a young girl who belongs to a marginalized group appears and needs our hero's protection to meet up with their larger collective, as it were, they'll semi-reluctantly come out of retirement to go on a journey to protect this young child. Along the way, they'll meet up with wise, familiar friends who also happen to be experts on and part of this marginalized group, as they run from a dastardly group that we've kind of come to know over the past few series who wants to capture this girl. Eventually, our hero will rediscover their hope for the future after confronting a dark version of themselves, eventually passing the torch on to a next generation. Yeah, I went there. So just to say it, I'm completely guessing here, so everything I may be saying could be complete and utter BS. I mean, I'm speculating a lot on just a single 2-minute trailer, and a little bit of news here and there from outside. I'm just having a bit of fun here, and even if the show ends up being a literal beat-for-beat remake of Logan, which, given that Logan was 2 hours long, and Picard is at least gonna be 10 hours, and that Pulitzer Prize-winning writer Michael Chabon, long-time Trek writer Kristen Beyer, Patrick Stewart himself, and a team of talented writers behind Star Trek Picard, I'd be massively surprised that if they did that. Even if they did, that doesn't mean it's bad. There are so many stories that are essentially copies of each other. Mr. Robot and Fight Club, Avatar and Pocahontas, Venom and Upgrade, People vs. OJ, and the real-life People vs. OJ. In the end, it all comes down to execution. You can have the best bare bones of a story, but if the moment-to-moment events don't ring true to your characters, then it's not gonna matter. Hell, think of how many times any Shakespeare play has been completely remade, to both good and bad results, despite using these same exact scripts. Plus, Logan was one of the best superhero and geek films of the last decade, if not the best. Don't at me. Wait, is that actually controversial to say? Ooh, I do love Into the Spider-Verse. That's a different video. And honestly, I think Logan is a great story template to place Picard in, and one that I think will ring completely true to the character of Picard, Star Trek's message as a whole, and to what we as a society need to hear today. Throughout Next Generation, Picard was always the stalwart paragon of virtue. I mean, how many grandiose speeches on morality did Patrick Stewart have to deliver in just 7 years? Oh, and I loved each and every one.
We cannot take a fundamental principle of the Constitution and turn it against a citizen. We cannot blindly follow orders. The first duty of every Starfleet officer is to the truth, whether it's scientific truth, or historical truth, or personal truth.
You could talk morality to me all day, Patrick Jackman. Picard constantly believed that humanity's better nature could and would always win the day. Yet, when we finally moved to the feature films of Next Generation, Picard's morality and optimism began to be tested to its limits. In Generations, his family is killed in a fire, and he loses his home of 7 years, the Enterprise D. In First Contact, he had to overcome his PTSD in order to directly hold on to his optimism. In Insurrection, he He had to endure the horrors of puberty and a terrible script. Don't at me, Steve Shives. I love you, but Insurrection,
A British tar is a soaring soul, as free as a mountain bird.
Okay, I still enjoy it. And in Star Trek Nemesis, he had to face the real truth of who he could have been if he hadn't grown up in the Federation. All of these movies, and especially First Contact and Nemesis, were a darker journey for Picard than he had ever really faced before. And we know that the destruction of Romulus, a crisis that Picard had a direct hand in dealing with the aftermath of, weighs heavily on his heart even 20 years later at the start of Star Trek Picard. So, like in Logan, we are dealing with a main character who used to fight for belief in a brighter tomorrow, who has now had the universe constantly test and beat down their optimistic view for the future. Who now think that their legacy and their life's work may have ultimately meant nothing in the grand scheme. And Star Trek Picard, like Logan before it, could show us how Picard learns that hope and optimism is not naive, but does require a constant, lifelong struggle, and intergenerational struggle, that our better natures will always win, as long as we believe in it. That's what Logan was ultimately all about. And I think that that's a great story for Star Trek Picard to build and rip off of. I don't know a better story for today's world and the world of Star Trek. It honestly feels quite hard to believe that our future looks bright right now, at least in the United States, which is where I'm from. So I truly could use a story about how we fight to hold on to that belief in a better tomorrow. A better tomorrow that Star Trek has always managed to show us. And I can't think of a better man to take us on that journey than Wolverine. And Picard. Of course, yeah, Picard too.
Engage.
Hey interwebs, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked this and want even more analysis of geek topics on everything from Star Trek to DC Comics, or you want social and political analysis and discussions, or social and political discussions through geek topics, give my channel a subscribe. And if you want to actively help make my videos even better, consider giving to my Patreon page. Each and every bit helps make these videos truly awesome, and there are some cool perks and benefits of being a Patreon, like having your name listed below just like these wonderful, amazing people. And finally, I want to give a shout out to Patreon Stefan Schuchart, who is kind enough to be a Patreon at the Admiral level. Thank you so much, Stefan. Your support and the support of my other patrons truly means the world to me, and it's what keeps me motivated as a creator. But regardless of if you subscribe or give to my Patreon, I hope that all of you live long and prosper.